Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this Rising Star webinar today. My name is Ali Yamagata from Saint-Gobain, North America, and I'm the YPN liaison for the Cements division, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. Before we start, I want to announce that we are officially, let me share my screen today. For some reason, it's not sharing. Okay. Yeah. Click share. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, before we start, I want to announce that we're officially open for abstract submission for the 16th Advancing Cement-Based Materials Conference, which will be had at University of Miami, Florida, Coral Gables campus between June 10 and 12, 2026. This is a premier conference for scientific advancement in cement and concrete research. We hope you all be able to join us this summer. Um, you can find a hotel and travel information in our website. Um, and Miami can get very expensive, so book hotels and travel soon. Also, there is like World Cup coming, so yeah, make sure you get arrangements like soon. And the Cements Division would like to take the time to thank our current sponsors for the conference. Thank you very much. There's still availability if you still would like to sponsor a conference. And if you need more information, please contact Vicky and Purnoy. For those who are, yeah, and see you in Miami. For those who are not familiar with the uh, American Ceramic Society, or we also call ACERS, I want to quickly talk about ACERS and the benefit of being a member. So being a member of ACERS give you access to resources that allow you to continue to uh, learn and grow, gain recognition with awards and scholarship, apply for support to travel and to attend conferences. Um, and this is the ACERS membership path depending on where you are in your career. If you're students, we have the Mature Advantage Student Program, uh, Graduate Researcher, Global Graduate Research Network. There's also the associate membership. If you're a professional, I have never been involved in ACERS, you can join for free for a year, and then for a second year for a reduced cost. And then we have like the individual membership. This webinar is brought to you by the Cements Vision, and this is one of the 11 divisions of the American Ceramic Society. We advance the fundamental material science of cement with the emphasis in nano to microscale research and develop new technologies for concrete. There's a lot of for you for opportunities to connect, meeting and events, resources, leadership, development opportunities, and awards. We currently have a call for early careers award nominations. The deadline was extended until February 21st, so make sure you submit. This early career award is award that recognizes and extending early career scientists who's conducting research in the field of cement and concrete in the academic industry or government-funded laboratory. The nominee must be a member of the Acer Cements Division or become a member before the nomination deadline. Must have been completed the terminal academic degree no more than 10 years. It should be working primarily in the field of cement and concrete sites. Self-nominations are not permitted. You can get more information on the website, and or you can also send questions to Alex or Vicky. Um, so now I would like to introduce today's speakers. Cesar Romano is a senior researcher in the Department of Civil Engineering at the University of São Paulo. His expertise lies in applied rheology, Portland cement chemistry, and the development of eco-efficient cement-based materials for additive manufacture. Dr. Romano takes an interdisciplinary approach, blending concepts of cement chemistry, material science, rheology, and processing. This integration is crucial for the successful 3D printing of cement-based materials. Now it's a great honor to give you the floor to Dr. Cesar Romano. Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Alessandra, for this kind introduction. Can you see my screen?
I cannot see your screen.
Sorry?
There's a
Can you
share
see?
button. I cannot see it.
I try to share again.
Okay, yeah, now I can see it.
Ah, okay, okay. I will try to. I will change one slide. Is working?
It's working.
Ah, okay. Alessandra, thank you for your kind introduction. And I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Is a truly honor for me. So today I will try to bring a discussion of some concepts that I believe are extremely important for development of eco-efficient cementitious composition for 3D printing. For this reason, I will present a more conceptual perspective on the importance of using tools that enable the reduction of environmental impact of the cement value chain. In a world where conventional construction practices are not advancing at the pace required to meet the most urgent demands. So, more than discussing from rheological requirements to eco-efficient mix design in 3D print cement-based materials, my goal today is to show that it's possible to formulate for low carbon 3D printing. This will be the goal, the main goal of this presentation. So to do that, uh, I will share the motivation behind our research on sustainable composition for 3D printing. And rather than focusing solely on materials or machines, we explore how advanced rheological concepts can be used as a formulation strategy to fundamentally rethink the mix design for 3D printing. Most important, I will show that this approach is not limited to laboratory scale studies. It can be scaled up to real application, allowing the production of small buildings using the infrastructure that we have here available in our laboratory. So I would like to start by discussing the impact of global population growth, because despite a slowdown since the 60s, the world population is projected to exceed 10 billion people by 2100, posing significant challenges for the construction sector. And in parallel with this, there is a clear trend of migration from rural areas to urban areas. It is estimated that until 2050, more than 65% of the population will live in the urban areas. So this figure here summarizes the scale of challenge we are facing. By 2030, the global demand for housing is expected to reach nearly 3 billion people. And according to the United Nations, this translates into the need to build approximately 96,000 new affordable homes every single day. So this is a very huge problem for the population. Clearly, this level of demand cannot be met using conventional construction practice alone in terms of speed, cost, or environmental impact. As a direct consequence of that, this rapid urbanization of and large migration, the demand for housing has intensified dramatically. And as a result, some urban problems tend to grow, including these informal settlements, housing deficits, pressure on basic services, and things like that. So we need to build more and we need to build faster. But in a world with an aging population, in which the natural resources are becoming increasingly scarce, and the workforce is shrinking, and we need also to consider the environmental demands. So this is a huge problem. So before discussing technologies or materials, important to recognize the central role of civil construction in the global economy. The construction sector plays a crucial role in infrastructure development, urbanization, job creation, and this directly support the economic growth and social development worldwide. In fact, few sectors have such a broad and systemic impact on society. From an economic perspective, the construction sector represents around 13% of the global GDP. And this is so high. For example, in emerging economies, this level is still high because in these emerging economies, we need to have a rapid urbanization, large scale infrastructure, and we need to sustain the demands for housing in these economies. But in developed countries, this represents more moderate share of the GDP, because in these countries, the activities are dominated by the rehabilitation, retrofitting, and maintenance of existing structures. So these differences reflects a shift from expansion to optimization and preservation of built environment. But the productivity limitations become even more critical when combining these markets. For example, the civil construction sector is one of the least digitized industries with slow technological adoption. As you can see in this slide, the productivity in civil construction sector was only 0.4% per year. And this is not good because we need to build more edifications and faster. So you can see here that if we adopt digital tools processes, construction companies can improve their competitiveness. It's possible to reduce risks, enhance their reputation for delivering innovative, high quality projects. So you can see here that the digitalization in the construction sector is very, very bad. When we talk about digitalization in construction, it's important to recognize that we are not referring to a single technology. In fact, digital construction encompasses a broad set of tools and approaches, including digital design, simulation, automation, robotics, and data-driven decision-making. So together, these technologies enable a fundamental shift in how structures are conceived, designed, and built. The digital construction allows the construction process to become more precise, opening the door to technologies that can significantly improve productivity and sustainability. So, one of the most prominent examples of digital construction is 3D printing of cementitious materials. This technology allows structural elements to be fabricated directly from digital model without formworks and with a high degree of geometric freedom. So implementing 3D printing concepts in the construction sector can help us to reduce from 30 to 60% the construction waste. It's possible to reduce it from 50 to 80 in the labor costs, from 50 to 70 the reduction of the production time, and things like that. So it's very important to say that 3D printing in concrete has shown an average annual growth rate of approximately 15% up to 2021. And the estimative is to grow in the next year. So this is a motivating information. So when we work with 3D printing or digital construction, it's possible to reduce the volume of material that we need to use for the edification. This reduction is structural in the structural volumes is not limited to the individual elements. So when we apply systematically these concepts, we will be able to contribute to the dematerialization of the composition. So we can develop some composition that needs to be eco-efficient, but we can also dematerialize the construction. And this will cause a reduction in the volume of the material that we will be used in our edification. Because of this, it's possible to dematerialize the construction and decarbonize if we are able to develop correct compositions. So this is in accordance with the sustainability and increased productivity in the construction sector, reducing the CO2 emission. So at the core of this approach lies a simple but powerful principle. We need to place only the right material in the right place. Unlike conventional construction, for example, where material is often used to compensate for uncertainty, digital fabrication allows material usage to be governed by structural demand and design intent. So achieving this vision is not only a question of machines or software. The success of 3D printing strongly depends on the development of appropriate cementitious formulation. And without adequate rheological control, the potential for dematerialization cannot be fully realized. So the challenges associated with 3D printing must be addressed without increasing the environmental footprint. This requires formulations that are not only printable, but also eco-efficient, combining low binder contents with controlled rheological performance across all the stages of the printing process. So this brings us a central question. That is a question of this presentation. How can we design cementitious materials whose rheological behavior is deliberately engineered to enable printability, buildability, and dematerialization at the same time? It's not trivial, it's not so easy to do that. I prepared for this presentation a survey in which I evaluated a lot of papers from literature collected from 2012 to 2026, and in which I organized the results from cement consumption and binder consumption in this concrete reported in literature, international literature to us. I consider more than 200 compositions reported in literature. And it's clear that between 2012 and 2020, most formulations were characterized by very high cement and total binder content. Because during this period, the buildability had priority. And for sure, this resulted in high cement contents or high level of binder content, exceeding 800 kilograms per cubic meter. But the trend is changing. And since around 2020, a clear change in the researches, focus, the researchers were focusing on reducing the amount of Portland cement because they started to work with rheology, with using of Portland or of supplementary cementitious materials, and work with different mix designs and different kinds of materials that can replace cement and reducing the binder content, the cement content, but without losses in the printability and in the properties in the hardened state. So in this case, the trend since 2020 is that the consumption of Portland cement or other kind of cement are around, in average, are around the 440 kilograms per cubic meter. This is a very good information because one of the questions about the use of 3D printing was based on the high level of Portland cement, and we are solving this problem here. The success of 3D printing does not depend on a single element, but on the integration of design, machine, software, and materials. In this presentation, I will focus on one of these pillars, the development of cementitious ink, I'm saying, or the cementitious composition that I'm developing here in Brazil. We are developing here because we are a team. We are developing here in Brazil based on concepts of eco-efficiency. And I will discuss how material design governs printability, buildability, and eco-efficiency. But regardless of the specific technology adopted, 3D printing of cementitious materials follow a clear and well-defined process logic. Is this illustration that I'm showing here? It starts with digital design and tool path generation, followed by material mixing, pumping, extrusion, and controlled layer by layer deposition. I'm showing here an example of one case system to producing because it is the most simple way to produce some structures. Each of these steps imposes specific requirement on the equipment and the material. But I'm showing this example here, but there are many processes that can be used, many machines that can be used. So different systems have been developed to address specific constraints related to scale, mobility, precision, and construction environment. The examples include gantry-based system, delta printers, articulated robotic arms, polar arms, and SCADA type configuration, and others. But each of these architectures offers distinct advantage and limitation in terms of printing area, geometric freedom, speed, and applicability on site or off-site. Independent of that, this diversity of machine concept is not accidental. It reflects the wide range of application that 3D printing can address in construction. So, one important application, for example, I will put just 3 examples here, but there are a lot and is increasing the number of examples. One important application of 3D printing is to build affordable housing. In this context, for example, the focus is often on speed, cost reduction, and repeatability. But we have example that it was printed entire housing units directly on site, addressing urgent housing demands with simplified construction logistics. And beyond housing, for example, 3D printing has also been applied to construction of full-scale building with more complex architecture and functional requirements. These two examples demonstrate that the technology is not limited to a smaller temporary structure, but can be extended to multi-story buildings and permanent construction. And the construction can be, and 3D print can be made on-site or off-site. Another important example is for prefabricated components. Because in this case, the printing is performed in a controlled environment, and the elements such as columns, walls, or facade components are later assembled on site. So, regardless of the machine or the application, all of this system ultimately rely on the same critical element. The performance of cementitious materials during each stage of the 3D printing needs to be a target, because for the 3D printing, we need to have adequate consistency of our product, because the demand for the 3D printing composition is not only in the hardened state, is during the stage of production. But the main challenges to obtain, there are some challenges to obtain an adequate 3D printing. The first major challenge is the appropriate selection and proportioning of raw materials. For 3D printing, materials are not required to perform, as I said, in 3D printing, materials are not required only in the hardened state, but also during the application, because they must to flow, they must to be extruded and rapidly gain stability. A second critical aspect is the alignment between the manufacturing process and the product requirement. The printing time, pumping distance, nozzle geometry, and layered deposition, things like that. If this alignment is not well designed, we may face premature loss of workability, poor interlayer bonding, or even clogging in the printing system. And the last one, beyond the technical aspects, there are policy and practice related challenges. Because there are a lack of standards and testing methods. So it's difficult to obtain a license to produce this without standards. So the challenge is clearly multidimensional. It is not just about the material, machines or software alone, but it's about how all of these elements work together. So we have some strategies. We need to carefully select the constituent materials. We need to produce the materials with low binder mix design. We need to use the rheology to understand the things to evaluate the materials and the mixtures. We need to change the rheology of the materials using admixture, not using water. For example, adding water may temporarily improve flow, but it compromises buildability, it compromises the stability and durability of pieces. And we need to, the print quality needs to be governed by all of these together, material, machine, and digital integration. And because of this, we need to understand the concepts of rheology, because rheology can help us to understand the things that the main challenge that we have, and that help us to solve many problems that we have during the production by using the strategy of 3D printing. And rheology, the concept of rheology is the science that investigates the relationship between stress, strain, and flow behavior of the materials. So we have the concept of rheology, the science, and we have also two of the main rheological parameters that we have in this science, that we study in this science, that are very important for 3D printing technology. The yield stress, that's the minimum stress required to initiate the flow, and the viscosity, that can be defined as a resistance of the fluid to the shear deformation, or is a parameter governing by energy dissipation during the flow, or often can be described as an internal friction due to interparticle interactions. Yield stress and viscosity are closely correlated with the properties of the materials during the 3D printing. But we also need to understand that we have the rheological parameters, but we have also the rheological behavior of the materials. The most common behavior that the guys say that can discuss is the Newtonian fluids, is the behavior of Newtonian fluids. But we have also the behavior of Bingham shear thickening and shear thinning that are non-Newtonian fluids. For 3D printing, for example, we never want to have the shear thickening behavior, because when we are putting this in a pump, and for high pressure, this fluid can behave as a solid material, and this can be a problem for the pumping. But when we have very low shear condition, this material behaves as a fluid. Like in this example, that it's possible to manipulate this, but when we stop to manipulate, the material is flowing. So we need to understand the rheological behavior of the fluids for 3D printing development. And we need to understand that the real materials are not ideal solids or ideal fluids, because we have materials with a contribution, part of the contribution that is solid or fluids, or they have elastic deformation, or they have they flow, they have a visco behavior. So we are working, when we are developing the compositions of cementitious materials for 3D printing, with real materials that present viscoelasticity. So we have yield stress, we have the viscosity, that are important parameters for rheology. We have the rheological behavior that you want to have for pumping, and we need to understand that the materials are viscoelastic. And we need to consider also, we can't forget that the flowability of the reactive powders like cement changes in function of time. So we need to consider all of these parameters for the development of compositions for 3D printing. So because of this, we need to understand that the reactive materials are behaving in a certain way at that moment that are being evaluated. They are not behaving that way indefinitely. This is an important information here. But what I need to, can I correlate all of this I'm saying with 3D printing? For sure. Because during the process of printing, we have different rheological stages. We have different rheological moments in which stage of 3D printing. So this is very important to us. And using just one kind of of tests to evaluate all of this system during the 3D printing, we will have problems because we will not have complete information about all of the system. We will not have information about the mixing, the pumping, the deposition, of layer by layer, and things like that. So in each stage of this production, we will have different rheological stages. So we need to choose the best rheological test to evaluate correctly each one. For example, we have this system for 3D printing, 1K 3D printing, for example. During the mixing, the material must allow efficient dispersion and particle and admixtures, while minimizing energy, the energy demand. During the pumping, it must exhibit stable flow under confined condition with controlled viscosity and shear thinning behavior to limit pressure losses. During the extrusion, the material experiences very high shear rates and must flow without segregation and blockage, for example. So the rheological requirements changes completely in each stage of the process of 3D printing. The material must develop sufficient yield stress and structural buildup to retain its shape and ensure buildability. So this is very important. So controlling the rheological behavior across the different processing stages, representing a critical pathway toward the development of eco-efficient cementitious composition with enhanced performance and durability. So this is the main topic here, because we need to control adequately the rheological behavior to understand the properties of the materials we are developing. For this reason, we propose here at the research that we are doing here at the University of São Paulo, the use of an extended rheological characterization approach. Instead focusing on a single parameter, this strategy that we are proposing aims to characterize the material response across the different rheological stages of the printing process. For example, we need to understand the yield stress of the material, the viscosity, thixotropy, shear thinning, or the rheological behavior, the extrusion pressure, the ability the flow stability during the extrusion, the draining time. We need to understand the compressive strength during the fresh state, and we need also to evaluate the buildability. And for sure, we can't forget the entrained air, because entrained air affects a lot the yield stress and the buildability of 3D printed elements here. And these are the protocol that we are using for the extended rheological characterization. We are using rotational rheometry, flow table test, that is a single point test, but is standards here in Brazil. We are using the method of Bembo in Bridgewater. We are using the squeeze flow test. We will start to apply the slug test to evaluate also the extrudability, but the extrudability is being evaluated using Bembo Bridgewater test and things like that. And with this, without the adequate rheological control, the dematerialization that I said previously is not possible. So we need to understand the rheology of the materials to propose different strategies to be printed, the materials. We know for sure, we always, our target always will be the efficiency of the materials. And if you use for the development, if you reduce the amount of water that you use to mix the composition, you will have less volume of pores in the microstructures. And in consequence of that, we will have better properties in the hardened state. For sure, this is true. But when we reduce the amount of water and the binder content, the more difficult rheological control becomes. So this is the best way to use the rheological characterization. For example, I will present here an example that we have. Since the beginning, we started these protocols of test because we and these tests, this protocol, we are applying for all of the materials that we are receiving here, and we have many success with this. So in this first example, the study was focused on implementing different techniques for the fresh state characterization because we received a new machine to start our tests here. And when we received our first 3D printer for testing, we had no prior experience with the technique, with the equipment. And the machine supplier recommended to us a reference mixture that, according to them, was already consolidated for printing with that system. And this reference I'm showing here. So after receiving training and technical guidance from the company, we began the tests without initially modify the proposed composition. This reference mixture consisted only of natural sand and cement. And you can see here, the Portland cement consumption was very high. Very high for the target that we have here, but not by the target that we have worldwide. So, although we immediately recognized that the cement content was above our sustainability targets, it was essential for our research to first characterize the rheological behavior of that composition that works in that machine. In the printing concept adopted by this equipment, there was no pump stage. I need to say this because the material was mixed and directly feed into the print head, okay, and then forced to throw the nozzle. Once the rheological characteristics of this reference composition were understood, we initiated the development of more sustainable formulations, reducing the cement content to less than half of original value. So I'm showing here 4 mixes, but we studied a lot of mixing, but I'm showing just 4 for the example that I intend to show to you. We did this, replacing part of the Portland cement by a blend of limestone filler. So changing the blend of sands, changing the blend of finer particles, we had these changes in the particle size distribution. And as a consequence of that, we had changes in the total packing of particles, the packing of finer particles, the packing of sands. And we have considerable difference in the parameters of this mix, all of this mix design. And for sure, in the volumetric surface area, that is a very important property when we are developing for 3D printing. So we had, for the compositions, different cement consumption, different water consumption, comparing with the reference. We used limestone. We had different particle size distribution. We didn't use admixture because the guys from the machine said to us that they didn't use admixture. So we have potential for reducing water consumption with the use of admixture. We can have better properties if we reduce the amount of water using admixtures, for example, and the printability also. So the first test we did was about printability. And the success of the test would be if we had the same quality of the reference composition. And we draw this, we produced this project here, and we started to print the materials. So, and we fixed the parameters for 3D printing. After all the printing tests, we saw that these two mixes were better than the other one, and even better than the reference mix. But when we apply the concept of flow table test, they presented similar spreading during the flow induced here. Because of this, we can't use for important information about the quality of the composition. It's not possible to use just a flow table test. It's just an indication, a visual indication of the spreading of the material. And we didn't have any information, any good information about that. But when we started to apply our extended rheological characterization, we applied here the rheometer, the phase rheometer from Calmetrics to evaluate the stage of mixing and the stage of shear cycle, that the shear cycle is equivalent. We can have information about pumpability and some things like that. During the mixing, it was clear the differences between all of these 5 mixings. And we had here, for these 1 and 2 mixes, we had problems with the energy of mixing. So there are in some places, the mixing is continuous. And it's a very good strategy to improve the productivity in the field. But using these 2 kinds of composition, maybe it would not be possible to produce in a continuous mode. But here, we had very, very low energy of mixing, and we had differences, considerable differences between these 3 and these 2 about the consistency after the mixing. And we had here, using this first evaluation of our extended rheological characterization, information related to the mixing stage. For sure, we had also differences in the yield torque. This first point of yield torque is correlated with yield stress, and this can be correlated with viscosity. And it's possible to see that 2 of these 5 compositions are different from the others, and these mixed 3 and 4 presented the same pattern of the same rheological profile or the same level of torque observed for the reference material. So we had information related to the yield torque, to the viscosity, to pumpability, to thixotropy of the material. That is very important when the material is deposited in the layer. And here we have a table that is summarizing all the results, and it's possible to see that all of the composition presented shear thinning behavior. That is not the case here because it was not pumped, but we want to have this rheological behavior if you want to pump the material. And we have similar results for the rheological parameters when we apply the rotational rheometry to evaluate the mixing and to evaluate the rheological behavior, the yield torque, and things like that. But 3D printing involves compressive shear phenomena also, like extrusion, compaction, spreading, and consolidation on surface. And using just rotational rheometers, we don't have condition to evaluate the compressive shear. So to do this, we need to use another kind of methods. Bambo in Bridgewater was a test, a kind of test that we are simulating the material when is thrown by the nozzle. And during this process, it's possible to evaluate the extrusion pressure that we need to this deposition for this extrusion. And we have information related to pumping and extrusion. Here it's possible to differentiate the materials. You remember that we didn't have differences between the mixes 3 and 4 with the reference mix during the stage of mixing and pumping. But we have considerable differences here when we apply a method that is specifically to evaluate the extrudability of the material. And it was possible also to see that when we evaluated the reference mix, we had phase segregation here, phase separation here. So these compositions presented very good extrudability capacity. And we also use the squeeze flow test to evaluate the potential to be printed or the printability. And here, similar the result obtained by Bambo method, the mixes 3 and 4 presented better printability compared with the other. And we have information using this test about the layer strength. We can understand the thickness of the layer we can press during the 3D printing process and things like that. For example, if we consider this mix 2, just for an example, we made the test of printability using this thickness of layer, this thickness of layer, and this thickness of layer of each layer. It's clear the differences in the quality of the materials. Here is an example of the best composition that we evaluated in this work. Here on the left, we produced the piece with very low compressed. The layer are higher than the other. This is an intermediary compression, and this is too compressed. You will see all of these are the same batch, all of these are the same composition. And you will see here that we will have a collapse when we use this layer. We had an adequate piece when we use the intermediary condition of layer, and we have poor quality here, in this case on the right here. So all of this information we obtained using squeeze flow test for this determination. Using this composition, this mix 3, was possible to print using a 1K system this pillar with a non-stop printing with very good quality and without using accelerating agents and with Blau binder consumption. And here are the team very happy. And now we started the construction of this kitchen. Here we have an illustration. This kitchen in a shared living area with the same composition that we developed. Here we have the example of the production of the segments of the walls produced on site. And then we move these walls to the place in which the kitchen is being built with the same binder consumption. This composition here presents 20 MPa of resistance. So we applied this concept of extended rheological characterization in many of compositions we developed in the lab. We evaluated the variation of binder consumption, different sands, to evaluate the mineralogy, the shape, and the particle size distribution. We developed the high strength composition, but for high strength composition, we needed to increase the cement consumption in the composition. Is not so loud, so loud. We use it a lot the mining tailings from different mining process. We compare different admixtures for the developments, and we are using for all of these topics, we are using the extended rheological characterization, and it's been a success. For example, we used this same protocol to evaluate industrialized products here. And it was possible to observe that they have different concepts of dosage here. For example, these two products here presented after mixing very high level of entrapped air. These two compositions here presented very considerable differences in the flow induced here. Oh, had problem with my, it's not changing. Oh, change. So, for example, we applied, this is during the mixing. We applied the concept of squeeze flow and the concept of Bamble, and we saw that the concepts of development of each company was very different. We had here a composition that presented very high load with very small displacement. This composition, for example, after mixing, we tried to do the Bamble test, but the composition did not present adequate yield stress, and it was not possible to do the printing tests and things like that. So we can have enough information to observe all of the global scenario during the development using the extended rheological characterization. So just some examples here. We developed, you can see the quality of the product that we are developing using mining tailings. Here are the pieces exposed. Here we have this other piece here, and another examples we have here. But the question is, we can apply the extended rheological characterization to understand the rheological performance of the material, but we need also to develop the composition. In the development of composition, for the development of composition, we need to select the correct materials. But how to select? I put here an example of the differences of sands that we have here in Brazil. All of these are sands. But which sand we will choose? We will use the concept of packing to choose the sand. I put here different sands, different particle size distribution, different sizes of the sand. And 5 of these 6 sands I put here present the same packing. So packing you need to use the concept of packing carefully, because what will be the maximum size of sand you will need to use? For example, I produced here a blend of sands. All of these blends I will show here presented the same packing according to the Westman-Hugill model. But we have different particle size distribution. So we need to use packing for sure. Is a good tool to understand some things, but we need to be careful when we use only this concept for the development. We have here, for example, cement and two limestone filler. And we have, for example, this packing of each one isolated. But when we started the combination between them, we can produce a finer particle of our composition with low volume of voids. And it was possible to reduce 7% in the cement consumption using this strategy here. And then you can mix the finer development with the sand development, with the coarse development, and then you can choose if your particle size distribution will be prepared with gap size, for example, or will follow a continuous concept. In this composition here, we have 30% of finer particles and 7% of cement and of sand. But we can also change this depending on the target you have for your composition. You can change the ratio between the finer particle and the sands here. And we will have different parameters in the development. What will be the best strategy? Depends on your target, but you can find trying testing the compositions you are developing here using the extended rheological characterization. Do this concept work? Sure, it's working to us because we are developing composition with the maximum consumption of cement of 400 kilograms per cubic meter. We are below the average they are developing in the world, and with very good quality. So, just to finish this presentation, and I'd like to say that 3D printing, is a major scientific and technological challenge. And the development of eco-efficient compositions depends on the proper choice of raw material. And the correct proportioning between them depends on the target you have for your composition. The rheological evaluation, focusing on rheological stages of 3D printing process, is essential for the evaluation of dosing strategy. And the validation of the tests in a small scale in the lab should be done with printing tests to correlate all of these results we have. We have our current production. We are building a guardhouse at the University of São Paulo, at the campus at the University of São Paulo. This is the project. And then we finished the production of the segments that we will use in this guardhouse. Here we have an example of this, and we produced these pieces with 0.8 meters to 1.4 meters. It's just to questions related to the transportation to the place where the guardhouse will be prepared. So I'd like to thank you for your attention, and for sure I can't forget the team that we have currently. We had a lot of people that worked with us, but currently we have this team Yeah, I think this is a permanent thing, and we are coordinated by Professor Rafael Pilegi here at the University of São Paulo, but we have many people that is working very happy with, with these concepts that we are developing here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, like Cesar, for this amazing presentation. Was very good. Now we are gonna open the session for Q&A questions. We already have a couple of questions here, and if you're interested in making any questions to Dr. Cesar Romano, please you can send either in the Q&A box or the webinar. It also works because sometimes it's hard to find this Q&A box. Um, so Cesar, the first question is from Christina. Are you working with only OPC cement, or have you studied other cements such as calcium aluminate cements or CSA or other cements?
No, for development we are doing now, we are working just with OPC, but we intend to use the other kind of binders because we are not we are working just with the system, the 1K system to be printed. But for sure, if we will change for 2K system, we intend to use different kinds of material. One test we want to do is to use different kinds of binder, like CSA or calcium aluminate cement and things like that.
Yeah, and just to clarify, like I think from what your presentation, in your formulations, it's OPC, but you also include a bunch of like supplementary cementitious materials such as slag and
Yeah.
stuff. It's even though it doesn't
Yeah.
really have like other reaction systems, but it's still uh using that. Okay, we have
Yeah, but the only binder we are using in our composition is the OPC. But for sure, we are using different super. We are using limestone filler. Just that. We are not using silica fume or slag or things like that. We are using an OPC, and we are replacing part of this OPC by limestone filler.
I see. Thank you. We also have a question from Wen Chao. I think this you did answer somehow this afterwards, but how the particle size of the added sand slash mixture will affect the rheological properties of the concrete paste? Maybe you can expand a little bit this explanation.
Yeah, we are using the maximum particle size, the maximum grain of sand is 2.4. But why we are using this maximum grain size? Because we are printing using a small nozzle. For sure, if you will change the diameter of the nozzle, we can increase the maximum size of the grain. For sure. And the other question was?
Yeah, he was focusing on like the impact, like how the particle size of added sand mixture will affect the rheological properties of the concrete paste,
Yeah.
basically.
In the beginning of our research, we are using a blend of five cents. The maximum particle size was 2.4 millimeters. But now we are developing our composition using just one cent that presents an open particle size distribution. So it's been very good to us because we understand the blend, the ratio between the sand and the finer particles, and we are using different concepts for the development of finer particles. So we are using concepts of particle packing, we are using concepts of volumetric surface area. We are trying to develop increase the plasticity of the finer particle of this composition, so we can use we the 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 tip here is if you understand very well your paste uh, and the volume and the ratio between the paste and the sands, you can have the dominant fraction in the paste. So you will reduce the impact of the sands in the flowability or during the printing.
Yeah, and thank you. So we have another question is how to evaluate the shrinkage behavior for such kind of material for 3D printed concrete.
Yeah, we don't have standards for that. Don't have standards for that, but we can evaluate the composition using standards that we are using for mortar, for example. We can evaluate the shrinkage. But we don't have a standard here in Brazil about the evaluation of shrinkage of the model of the piece that is produced. We started to think this in this not just for shrinkage, but for other kind of evaluation that we need to understand.
Yeah, I think your presentation focused a lot more in the fresh state, right? And I think like when we're thinking about shrinkage and like
Yeah,
compressive
but
strength and
this
things like that, it's more harnessing.
but this
Yeah.
is a very good question because
Hmm.
we discussed it a lot here about that. And to try to be careful with this, we are producing the composition with very low amount of water because I saw that there was an answer, a question here about superplasticizer. We are using superplasticizer for in this moment in our development. So we try to reduce the potential of shrinkage. We are using low amount of water, low amount of Portland cement, and we are working a lot with this. We are using small fibers also that is working just for the buildability, not for post tensioning, for example, is helping us with the buildability. And this can help us to reduce the shrinkage, all of these strategies.
Hmm. We have a question for Janani. Like, did you study at work with the rheological behavior for ceramics before?
Yeah, we are working also with this. We have 3D printers for ceramic. We have 3D printers for polymers, and we are working. The Yuri and Vitor, they are guys that are working with this, and we are working. We will apply the same concept of extended rheological characterization for ceramics. And we will also use these concepts for ceramics and mining tailings. We intend to use mining tailings in ceramics, we intend to use mining tailings in cement composition and things like that. But we are applying in this new research, we are applying this concept for ceramics also.
Mhm. Thank you. So we have a question from Drew as well. How do the mechanical properties relate to more traditional building materials? Would 3D printed structure using cement-based materials be more prone to mechanical or chemical damage over time?
Yeah. Uh, Alessandra, I'm sorry, it's not so good the sound here, but I will try to. I don't know if you understood very well because I had problem here.
If you want to read, this question came from the webinar chat. You can like click the chat, but I can repeat the question.
Ah,
How do
the
the
chat.
mechanical properties relate to more traditional building materials? Would
Ah,
3D
okay.
printed structure using cement-based materials be more prone to mechanical or chemical damage over time?
Okay, okay. We had this discussion here because we are producing different kinds of compositions using this. The development of compositions is independent of the material we will need to be used for structural things or just for just to fill the place, for example. Doesn't matter. But we are developing here composition now for structural things, and I'm in that survey that I did. We had information that the average of the last 10 years of mechanical performance here in Brazil, yeah, in the world, is around from 35 to 40 MPa. So we are working with this. But when we are developing compositions that don't need a structural performance, we will reduce the amount of cement we will and we will try to produce these compositions with very low compressive strength, for example. But for sure, the 3D printing composition needs to have the synergies between the mechanical aspects, the durability aspects, and the and because of this, we need to have the information about the damage over the time. For sure, we don't have this information now. Don't have this information now. We don't have standards yet to evaluate this. But for sure, we need to understand all of these things over the time in the beginning. Because, for example, we can have compositions that we had composition that was printed, and then after the during the first few months it was perfect, and then we expose it to the environmental conditions, and after 2 years, for example, we start to crack some things. So we need to understand the properties over the time also, not only the rheological parameters.
I see, yeah, that there's a lot of, so from what I understand, like there's a lot of ongoing research regarding the durability. And
Yeah.
also it also depend on the fresh state, like and all your presentation, like regarding rheology. And I think it's interesting that you said like because like in this question you talk about like 3D printer structure prone to mechanical or chemical. And that's true since you have like this flexibility of adjusting the design of for needs because it gives you so much freedom. Sometimes maybe it will like not be exposed so much. So you actually can make like a design that will be more less resistant, but at the same time, will be more sustainable. But in cases that, so you can actually adjust. That's very interesting. We have another question here from the chat. This is the Q&A box. There is a person asking about OPC cement. You mean CP1 or CP5 according to the Brazilian standards? Or do you use blended cements?
No, we are not using for our development, we are using CP5, is equivalent to SEM1 for Europe, for example. We are using CP5 just because we intend to replace a lot of cement by filler. So I try to use CP5 just because I don't want to have another kind of addition in the cement. It's just for that. But for sure, we can try to develop using compound cement like CP2F or CP2Z. Depends on the availability. But for our research, we are using CP5.
Okay, I think we don't have any more questions. So I would like to thank everyone for being here with us. After this session, we're gonna have like when you close this webinar, there will be a survey. So I would like to like people to um respond that if possible. That helps us like with future like events. And also like you guys to remind you guys about the 16 Advancing Cement-Based Materials Cement 2026. And yeah, please submit your abstracts. It's right now open, and we hope to see you all in Miami. So thank you so much, everyone. Yeah, thank you so much, Cesar. This was a fantastic presentation.
Thank you, Alessandra. Thank you, guys.